Hello and welcome to FI for Kids, the podcast about guiding your kids on the path to financial independence and extraordinary lives. I'm your host, Dominic DeLaquil. Our guest today is Julia Carlson. Julia is a financial coach, the host of the Financially Free podcast, and the author of Money Loves You, Transform Your Relationship with Money and Grow Your Wealth. Welcome, Julia, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's start with what you learned about money from your parents when you were growing up.
Okay, yeah. So I have a great money story. I had parents that had very healthy relationships with money. They taught us about spending money. They taught us about saving money, investing. There's this very vivid memory I have of sitting on my grandfather's lap, and he was watching Bloomberg and seeing the stock ticker symbols going across the screen. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So my parents didn't fight about money. They talked about it with us. And they also didn't have a scarcity mindset around it. And what I mean by that is I felt like we made intentional choices with our money, but I didn't feel like we didn't have the energy of we can't afford it. And I would say we're very middle class Americans. So it's not like we had a lot of money, but the way that it came across is we make choices with our money and how we spend it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So it sounds like they did a lot of the right things. Did they talk about budgeting stuff and set you up with any sort of investment things when you were younger?
Yes. So we did chores. So we got kind of allowances based on the chores that we did. They'd set us up with bank accounts and then savings accounts. And then when I got my first job at McDonald's, my dad sat me down and helped me set up my very first mutual fund. And I remember writing the check out for $25. And they would actually send me a statement with a coupon to send in more money. And that began the habit of a lifelong investing monthly, back into investment. So yes, they were really instrumental in setting that up, as well as giving, teaching us how to be good givers as well.
So this is really cool because, right? So you had parents who did all the things that come up frequently on this show. Not that people learned them, but that's what a lot of people are teaching their kids now. A lot of those same kind of things. So you're the first one actually who was like, no, I learned those when I was younger. So this is really fascinating because, so then you went on, right? You were having a successful career and doing well financially, but then figured out something still wasn't quite right. Something seemed missing. So talk about that.
Okay. So yeah, I actually went on to build a career in the money business, and it became about chasing this success for money, or I saw money as actually a symbol of my worthiness. So the more money that I made, the more that intrinsically made me feel like I was worthy and successful. And then in my later years, I've discovered that actually will have you feel empty inside. So, and it's like, if there's always a chase for more and more, then you don't really get to that contentment and joy and fulfillment place. And so, yeah, there was a lot of years there where I sabotaged, I'd make a lot of money, but then I'd spend a lot of money. And it was almost that way of, I think, subconsciously of having to be in that race to be more and more successful. And so I had to unwind that.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because that happens with all of us in lots of different areas where you're working so hard and you're so busy and you're just focused on, the things that need to be done. But then it's easy to fall into habits that aren't necessarily productive they're not necessarily ruts. I mean, maybe sometimes they are, but you fall into patterns, I guess, where they were serving you at one point, but then maybe they're not serving you any longer. They're not serving you in a more complete way that you had hoped that they would. And it can take any of us a while to see that. So I think that's really interesting because I think, with money, so much, the point of money is it should be a tool to have the happiness and the fulfillment and the opportunities to pursue the things that matter to you. It's not something to be pursued in and of itself. So I think that's an interesting path that you took.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, at the time it was unconscious to me. I was, whether it be retail therapy and spending and then hiding shopping bags from my husband, or it was like things that I wasn't really thinking about how I was spending the money. And so then when I got into this place where, hey, my future self is important. I want to save and save even more. It's not like I wasn't saving. It was just like I could have made a lot more progress a lot earlier on. So priorities changed, my values changed, who I became in that process just reflected in my decisions with money.
So what was it, one thing, or was it a combination of things over a longer period of time that brought you to that realization that, oh, this isn't quite right and I want to make some changes?
Yeah, I feel like the pivotal moment for me, kind of like the wake up call. My oldest daughter was in a car accident and she was traveling in a car hit head on by a drunk driver. She was 9 at the time. And here I was at a client event. Um, I like did not know what was happening. When I got out of that event, I saw all these missed calls and text messages and realized she was being life flighted at that point.
Man.
And so I got to ICU. We stayed with her for a week there. She's fully recovered, but at the hospital, again, this was unconscious to me. I was trying to run my business, trying to do all these things. Because I think it was like the doingness of it was making me feel like I was like I had to do all these things to make it happen. And so I went on a journey after that where it took several years to look back and say, oh, I'm not making the right choices, like of who I want to be as a mom, as a business owner. And so it was like learning the art of delegation after that. How do I unwind this feeling of worthiness to the doing, and be more in the presence of who I want to be as a mother. I mean, it took several years to unwind all of that, but I think that was a wake up call of just how I was operating needed to be changed.
Yeah. So how do those things that you went through and that process that you went through and reevaluating your priorities and what mattered to you and how you wanted to approach all that, how do those things then play into the book, Money Loves You?
Yeah. So I thought in the moment of that accident where I thought I had to choose between my relation, being a mom and being there to help her recover versus being in my business. And I actually, when I stepped out of my business that summer to help her recover, my business actually grew more. And so I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I need to get out of my own way. Because I had very capable people that were able to step up. And so what I learned in that process is there was a lot of giving and a lot of being in control. And so when you give, you're actually in control, and that it's actually harder to receive when you're in that place. So giving and receiving is supposed to be hand in hand.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so it was that process of learning to receive help from others, learning that other people should be on this journey with me if I have this big vision to help families experience financial freedom and financial independence. And so it was learning how to build a business and like building something great. And so through all of that and meeting with, kind of circling back to my origin story, I did realize how rare it was that I had this good mindset, or I was raised with this good mindset around money, because a lot of people that I meet with across the table did not have that mindset.
Mhm.
And so the book came about because what I had found is people that have a good relationship with money can talk about money with their partners, with their kids, with the professionals. They actually make a lot more progress with their money, and they have mastery over it. So that's what I have found, where if someone thinks, oh, money hates me. I mean, I've heard people say that, or I'm just not good with money, or I avoid money or ignore money. That's what's going to reflect back to you. And so so Money Loves You was born out of helping people really think about their mindset of what they're saying to themselves about money and also about themselves. Because that was the path that what I was stuck in. I didn't have a good sense of self-worth. I thought all this doing or having the nice things or having the nice car brought me my worth, which it's none of those things.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So that's interesting. So then talk about some of the core concepts in the book.
Okay. Yeah. So the first part of the book is really examining your origin story, your origin money story. So how you were raised around money. It invites you to go into your subconscious and say, how do I examine what those beliefs are? And then there's a process that I take readers through where if you don't have a great money story, let's go and mine that subconscious and figure out what's stuck in there. And then I take them through a process that helps them, like reveal what that sticky point is and then transform that into a solid wealth belief. So we have wealth busters and transform those into wealth beliefs. That can be really powerful. And so the mindset is a lot of the beginning. And then the back half of the book is the actual practical advice on managing money. And it's a very, I've looked at a lot of different ways to do money. I've followed strict budgets in my past. I've seen a lot of clients do that. But I actually fully embrace a concept called the anti-budget, which really is if you know where you're going and you have a clear picture of, hey, here's when I want to retire or when I want to be financially independent. Here's how much I need to save. Here's how I'm going to get out of debt if you need to have a plan for that. So if you're empowered with that information, then your money is going to flow to where you need to accomplish those goals. And so if I know I need to save $1,000 a month for retirement, then if that's set up automatically, I don't actually have to worry about making sure that happens every month. So
Right.
the anti-budget is about, we all get to spend the money the way we want. And you can learn a lot by someone if you just open up their credit card statement or their bank account.
Sure.
This is what's important to you. Eating out is important to you. Helping someone say, hey, there's no judgment or shame around that, but you spent $3,000 last month on eating out. So if you want to make progress on your goals, then is this a higher value than saving for your future or getting debt free? So it's like a values-based way to look at how you spend money, and nothing is wrong. So it's really up to that person to understand what their values are, what their priorities are, and then they can allocate the money that's in alignment with how they want to spend money.
Yeah, that's so perfect because I think that's so much of what FI is about, right? It's knowing yourself and knowing what you value and then choosing, okay, I'm going to spend money on these things. And I'm not going to spend money on other things that don't really bring me that much joy or that much meaning.
Yeah.
And that's how you create that difference, right? That excess money that then you can invest to move yourself towards financial independence. So then you just have more and more opportunities.
Yes.
And so you're not saying, when you say an anti-budget, you're not saying don't pay any attention to your money, not at all.
Yeah.
You're saying you've got to know what you're spending and where it's going at some point. So then you can make some informed decisions about what you value. And so, right, if you really value eating out, but you're not either getting out of debt or you're not saving enough or investing enough that you would want to get to your financial independence goal, then maybe it's, well, okay, we don't want to give this up entirely, but we can cut back. Exactly. So we'll reduce it by some percentage so that we have more money to put here. But then once someone makes that decision, they don't have to obsess over every last penny all the time in their budget. They're just following bigger picture guidelines. Is that a fair explanation? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. So it's more of what you track and prove. So absolutely, I believe in knowing where your money's going and looking at that. But what I have found in working with a lot of couples and individuals is that it's like the idea of a budget is restriction, like what I
Yeah.
can't do.
Yep.
And the way that the energy that I want to bring to it is, hey, you're making this money, you're working hard. How do you get to spend your money? How do you want to spend your money? And how do we make sure that that future you is happy with current you and how you're making those decisions?
Yeah. Well, and also current you is happy doing
Absolutely.
things that you like. It's not that
Yeah.
you should be living a life of deprivation. It's like, so you're trying to find the right balance between current you is happy because you're spending some money on things that matter to you, but you're also putting money aside, investing money for future you, right? So it's that balance of you're trying to make both of you
Yes.
happy. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's very cool.
Yeah, and most of us think about today only. Like it's really we think tomorrow will take care of itself. But when you can actually make this emotional connection and visualize what your future self will do and be and all of that, like that's actually really inspiring to then, hey, how do I make decisions from that future place today?
Yeah, because I think what I found, and from talking to other people, what you find when you get to that point is that you're still happy, right? Because again, you're making choices. Well, you're being very intentional about all of this. And so then you're making choices about where to spend your money now. And so you're still doing the things that really matter to you, right? We're very careful so we set quite a bit of money aside to invest every month. And we watch in a general sense sort of what we do. I'm a little bit more, well, I want to know the specifics because it just helps me than my wife does. She's like, she tries it. She goes, I don't, she's kind of more where you're coming from, like bigger picture. And
Yeah.
I've got these things set aside and then I don't want to think about the details as much.
Mm-hmm.
But our life on a day-to-day basis is great. It's exactly what we want. We know what things matter to us and we spend money on those things. We spend money on travel. We like to eat out, although we don't eat out as much as we would ideally do because we want to make sure we're meeting this goal of the money that we're investing. But our day-to-day life is really very nice. We feel like we've figured out a really great balance.
Yeah.
You can live a nice life while still planning for the future. So I think your point about budgeting feeling restrictive, it doesn't have to be and it shouldn't be. So I think it's really great that you're trying to switch people's perspective on that and make them feel positive and good about it because it serves them, right? It's a tool to help them craft a better life for themselves, both now and in the future.
Exactly. And what you shared made me think of, there's another concept in the book called financial seasons. And so just like the seasons of the year, there's 4 main seasons. And so it's broken up into about 90 days. And so that's how I think about when I help clients with their goals. It's like a lot of people have a lot of goals all at once. So the idea is let's look at one goal and say, okay, in the next 90 days, what progress can we make towards this goal for you to get into that momentum? So it could be paying something off. It could be saving for vacation, because vacations are amazing when you don't come back to a big credit card bill.
Yep. Yes, they are.
And
That's
so,
true.
and it's almost like, hey, this is just for a season. Like, okay, for this season, we're going to not go out to eat as much because we're going to put all this money to pay off the car or to save for the vacation that's coming up. So when you can chunk it down into smaller time frames, it just feels like you can get more momentum and it's not such an overarching, like big goal that you're going after.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Singleton Foundation for Financial Literacy and Entrepreneurship. Using the power of storytelling and entertainment to make learning about finances and entrepreneurship fun and engaging, the Singleton Foundation has a variety of free programs available to everyone. Million Stories is a video channel with over 30 short series. Groove is a goal-setting and financial learning app. Slingshot is an app to help you develop your business idea. And Venture Valley is an esports-style video game. You can learn more about all of these free, engaging, and entertaining programs by visiting the Singleton Foundation website at singletonfoundation.org. Thanks to the Singleton Foundation for helping to improve financial understanding, skills, and habits for everyone, and for sponsoring this episode. Yeah, that's good. I really like that idea. So how do people respond to that when you talk to them about the idea of sort of the financial seasons and picking 90-day spots of time to focus on something.
Yeah, it brings their priority to the focus of what they need to be doing right now. Because when everything's important, nothing's important. But if they have one thing to keep coming back to, I see clients make a huge amount of progress. This client, they're making over $500,000 a year. They have assets, they have retirement accounts, like they're in really good shape, but they had consumer debt. And I'm like, well, don't you want to work on getting out of this debt, especially by retirement, which was about 5 years out? And, it wasn't never a priority for them. And so I started talking to them like, let's focus the next 90 days. Let's focus on paying these off. And we put them in the order of how they should be or what made the most sense. And after a year, they were almost all consumer debt free because they had such a good income that they could just attack it. But because they never had that focus before, they were just kind of letting things, making the minimum payments, like letting everything ride. So they were actually every quarter when we got back on the phone, they were actually excited to tell me the progress that they were making.
Yeah.
Because they were excited about it. So It's amazing where our focus goes, our energy flows. Yeah, and that's so true because then your mind goes to work on how you can do more of that and make more progress.
Well, and the seasons idea is really great because it gives you a finite period of time to focus on a thing. That's a common thing with exercise and fitness, to pick, to have a 90-day window to focus on a goal because it lets you then, really make deliberate choices and sacrifice some things and really put more effort into this, but you can't sustain that kind of thing indefinitely. Yeah. So I think that's a great strategy. I really like that idea.
Yeah. And the important part when it's a couple is get the commitment from both of them, right? Like this is our focus for the 90 days. You cannot add to the focus unless it's an emergency. And then, when they come up for air in the next 90 days, they both get input of, okay, what's our focus on the next 90 days? So I think it's amazing to see how many couples still don't talk about money very often. They just get into the usual way that they do money and they just really avoid money conversations. But what I have found is when my husband and I could get on the same page, when my clients can get on the same page, and often it does take a professional to facilitate those conversations, but then it's like a muscle, you get better at it. And then you can have these really healthy conversations with money.
Yeah, well, and then you're working on things together. You not only do you reduce or minimize strife around money, but you're working on things together, and that feels good, right? Because then you've got these goals, you're working towards them, and they feel good. Going back to the idea of if you're not feeling confident with how you're interacting with your money, and budgeting sounds like this burden that you've got to deal with, and you're just resisting it and fighting it. Once you get beyond that and you have a different approach with that and you start to understand, paying attention to my money so I can make better choices and now I'm making progress, it's just like anything else. It's like if we stick with the exercise or the eating, anything fitness related, it can be hard to make the change at first, but once you start to see some results, you're like, okay, this is good. I want to keep this going. And it's not perfect. You will have ups and downs, but you also can see, what it feels like to have progress and to gain that control and to gain that confidence. And then it starts to become fun, right? So then together, it just makes it easier for you to work on things together. So that's great.
Yeah. As part of the 90-day seasons, we do what's called a financial empowerment snapshot, which is basically your net worth statement. And then usually I like to make the 90-day focus something they can measure on that net worth statement. So it could be reducing a liability, increasing an investment. Sometimes vacations, memory investing don't show up on that, but we try to key it back into how are we going to increase your financial empowerment snapshot or your net worth.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really cool. Now, do people then continue to just sort of do those perpetually? Do they take breaks sometimes? Or does it just depend on sort of where they're at with things? How do you structure that with them?
Yeah, so I teach them in the book, I teach them to do it quarterly. It's interesting. When I was writing my book, I went back and found my first snapshot that I did with my husband in 2005. And I think it was like we were just maybe around six figures. From 2005 to now, over eight figures, or not over eight figures, eight figures to, it's like, wow, to see the progress, zoom out 20 years, like it's amazing how much progress you can make over that time.
Yeah. And the thing that you realize when you're a parent, right, when you're an adult, is that 20 years, like when you're younger, if you're trying to talk to your kids about 20 years, it can be hard to get them because that just seems, that's infinitely out there. But as you get older, you realize, oh man, 20 years goes by fast.
Yes.
But if you can be consistent over that 20 years, then that's how you make this incredible progress. And then again, back to your future self, you started serving that future self 20 years ago. And then how good does it feel now? That's
and even
cool.
2008, 2009, we went backwards, like everything was tanking during that time, but we kept investing. And then, 5 years after that, you could see a real jump because we did invest during the market downturn. So it's pretty cool to document your financial journey. I'm kind of a nerd, so I like to do that, but we help our clients do that as well.
Yeah, cool. So I want to talk about a couple of concepts before we move on to something else, but give me your thoughts on, because I think these are two really important concepts, money as an amplifier. And then you talk about money as a mirror. So just talk a little bit about both those concepts.
Yeah. So I think, money as a mirror, it reflects back what we give it. So if we give it intention, if we give it focus, it's going to show up for us in that way. So if we're avoiding our money will avoid you. Right. So there is some, like, you want to pay attention to your money, and the more time that you focus on it in a intentional way is going to help you avoid the times where if you're avoiding it for years on end, you're going to have money problems. It's just the bottom line. And so it's just so choosing to give positive energy and positive focus and your time to managing your money is going to reflect that back to you. So, and also, the money, if you are a good steward over money, it's almost like as you gain mastery over money, you actually become unattached to it, is what I have found. And so it's like, it doesn't have juice on you. It doesn't trigger you because you have it figured out. And so, it may take a while to find that rhythm, but it's like to be in a place where you have that discipline built is where the freedom is found.
Yeah. Well, and once you can do that, then it just frees you up money's a tool, right? So then it just frees you up to use that in whatever way. So from an amplifying point of view, my take on that has been, well, if you are someone who wants to do good things with money, or you want to do good things to help other people, having more money will only let you do more of that. I know there's Absolutely. Kind of back to money mindset a little bit, and because I think it's so important where we started, or where you started, with this idea of diving down and understanding your deep-seated thoughts to money. And that can sound a little bit like, to some people, like, I don't need to do that. And that's, I don't, and I can get that resistance, but I think we have such lifelong and complicated relationships with money that there is a lot there that's subconscious that we don't realize. So I think there's real benefit to that, because you may be saying things to yourself that you're not even aware of that are blocking, that are messing you up in terms of either bringing in more money or being able to be a successful entrepreneur, if that's what you want, or your patterns about spending too much money, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So investigating that within yourself, that self-exploration, I think, is very valuable. And to the extent that parents can start that process and teach their kids that from an early age, just to create that habit, I think, and so that they're aware of money and how they think about it, is super important. But I know a lot of people sometimes think, well, if you have too much money, it's going to make me a bad person. And I don't believe that's true. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe that it's an amplifier, and that if you're self-centered and you want to take and whatever it might be, then sure, money might make you more of that. But if that's not who you are, which is most people are not that, they want to do good things, they care about other people, they care about their communities, and if they have more money, then they'll do more things to make life better for other people. And that's another thing that when you get to that point, it feels really good to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have 3 kids and they're older now. Like the youngest is 16. I have one graduating and one getting married this summer. And so,
Cool.
they were in our community. They have been targeted as the rich kids and have had to deal with that stereotype. We have just taught them. It's like, yes, we have made good choices. Yes, we have made good investments, and we've worked really hard. Like they were part of that sacrifice when they saw us work hard. We weren't at all the events, and I'm not the PTA mom. But then we've also been able to do, great experiences and go on travel and trips. But I teach them to say, you know what, they don't even understand what they're saying in that. That is obviously coming from their
people,
parents.
you mean? Yeah, the people saying that they're the rich kids.
Yes.
Don't understand what they're saying. Right?
Don't understand what they're saying. Yeah. And it's like we do give in our community. We're big supporters and we are kind and we're not going to judge back. And so it's like being able to have these conversations with our kids is so important because people are quick to jump to judgments and assumptions and all of that. But it's like being able to dissect that with our kids has been really important. Like we have all those conversations.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and speaking of your kids, I want to circle back around to where we started. Usually I ask these things kind of sort of back to back, but in your case, because you've had sort of a unique path, I wanted to do it separately. So you learned a lot of really great things about money when you were younger, right? And then sort of found, well, okay, but I'm not entirely happy and had to figure some things out along the way. So then what approach did you take with your kids to maybe marry those two sides of the money relationship?
Absolutely. So the real tactical, I have been in their classrooms talking about stocks and investments and savings. We've done where we've brought in kids into my office and hosted a little educational event there. So, they have investments that they can pick stocks in and we'll monitor that. So I've done all the things to teach them practically. But then I think more than that, it's that money, the mindset piece. So we're careful. Like they don't have all nice things and fancy cars and none of that. We could do that, but we choose not to do that. And so for that's actually, so when we choose to not spend money on something, we actually say it's a choice. It's not that we can't afford this. It's just we're choosing not to invest in this. And I think that's so important for parents is to choose your words wisely as you're working with your kids. And then also be vulnerable. If you say, oh, I can't afford this, or if you have said that, being able to catch yourself and saying, oh, that's actually not the best mindset. Like we're choosing to do this. So it's never too late to go back and correct that. Because we are all learning. It was interesting. I was doing after I wrote the book, I was doing a webinar about the book, about mindset habits of the wealthy. And I asked my son, he was 15 at the time, and I'm like, do you want to go to this masterclass? It was during the summer. He's like, Mom, I already have a wealthy mindset. Like that's just innate in him because of, we talk about these things with them on a normal basis.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So that's really great. And so in talking about it, you're talking about obviously the practical nuts and bolts things, but also just how you're thinking about it, how you and your husband are thinking about it, or how they might think about things. And I think that's really great advice and such an important piece. And just those conversations about, because that's come up on some other episodes where, a parent will make well, we're not getting that when they don't think to specify at the time, we're not buying that because we're choosing not to do that. They'll just say, well, no, we're not going to get that at the store today or whatever it might be, especially when the kids are littler and they're like, well, we're broke. It's like, well, wait a minute, where'd you get that idea?
Yes.
From a toss-off comment the parent didn't even think about. So having those conversations ongoing and explaining things. And I think that's so great. Like, look, it's a choice, because we've had conversations with our kids about that, right? There are things we choose not to spend money on, and other things that we do choose to splurge on. And we make sure and explain the difference. Hey, we're not doing this because we have a ton of money, or we're not doing that because we don't have any money. We're making deliberate choices based on what really matters to us and what we get a lot of value out of, and other things that don't as much. And there's no right or wrong to it. This is what we choose to do, but it's a choice. So I think that's really great.
Yes, absolutely. And then as they have earned their own money, like helping them make choices with that. So, like, do you really want this toy or whatever it is? Or like, let's think through this. And if it is something, then okay, then we'll let them buy that with their own money. But it's like helping them think through that decision process.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's based out of like a lifelong pattern of having conversations about money, I'm guessing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So important, because I think there is such a taboo out there still to not talk about money. And I think that does a lot of harm, does way more harm than good. And so the more that we can talk about money, certainly as a family at home, and I would argue just with other people and just in general, the better it is for all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think for them, money is a very regular subject in our house. And they'll see me engage with others, asking specific, like how people think about money or how they work with money. And so they're definitely used to those conversations, but I would absolutely agree. Like talking about money people would probably rather talk about sex than money. So, yeah.
Yep. So speaking of talking about money, I know you do some community outreach things. Just tell us a little bit about some of the things you do to help spread financial literacy and this idea of it's okay to talk about money out in the world at large.
Yes. So I would say the first thing, I've been on this financial empowerment advisory panel for the state of Oregon. So we work with the treasurer to raise financial awareness and putting resources out in the community and getting help to Oregonians. So that's one thing I do. But then locally, we're in the schools, we're talking about money. It's either me or another team member that, we want to teach kids about college savings and the parents about college savings, and then investing and, how to use debt wisely, because I think that's probably the biggest thing I see is like when they go off to college and they get into debt, and that, it's hard to come out of that. And so thankfully, Oregon just has, where I think starting in 2027, the seniors have to have personal finance as part of their graduating requirements.
Oh, that's great.
And so things are happening where I think we're seeing that it's just important that kids have this personal finance foundation as they go off into the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and they're going to make mistakes, but at least they've got some sort of a knowledge base that hopefully they can fall back on. And if they've, like with your kids, if they've grown up talking to their parents about money, then when they do make mistakes, hopefully then they can come to you and you can have conversations and you can help them figure out how to fix those mistakes, or how not to make those in the future, or how to move forward to pursue whatever it is their money goals might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know my oldest daughter, because of the accident, she got a settlement when she was 18, and it was like, she didn't even think about like going and buying all these big things. She was like, she turned around and gave the money back to us to put it into her investments. And so like, it wasn't even a question. And I was actually, I thought about it after. I'm like, wow, that's actually pretty cool that she's making, as an adult, she's making this decision. So.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So the book, I'm assuming people can find at all the usual places.
Yes, on Amazon.com. You can find it there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put a link for that in the show notes. And where can people find you if anyone wants to reach out?
Yeah, so you can visit my website, thejuliacarlson.com. And then my favorite social media is Instagram, so at the Julia Carlson. And if you want to message me there, I run all my own social. So happy to engage with you.
Okay, I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. And finally, so if listeners were going to take one action, what are I don't know, 1 to 3 different recommendations that you would put out there for people to consider if they were just after this show going to take action on one thing.
Yeah, so I would say spend time with your money. So if you resonated with the mindset and you feel like, oh, I don't have this abundance mindset, or I don't have the right mindset with money, then I would say focus there on finding that money story and then rewriting your money story, and what it could be. And then if you have your mindset right, then it's going into the practical. So it's like, looking at your financial season and figure out what's a goal that you want to go for in building your wealth and start going on those financial seasons.
Great advice. Julia, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the FI for Kids podcast. Please support the show by hitting subscribe and receive new episodes every Thursday. The intro and exit music this episode are courtesy of Douglas Cameron. As always, you can find links to the FI for Kids music in the show notes. Thanks again, and we'll talk next week.
You're like the horizon. I can't reach you, you're so far away. And if I run to the place I want you to stay, you'd be gone. I'd be left wondering why you moved on, and why you never said goodbye. I can't wait any longer. I see the writing on the wall. It's time for us to say, tomorrow we are yesterday. Tomorrow we are yesterday. You're like the sunset. You're glowing bright.